Hello, everyone. Welcome back. How was your coffee, everyone? Welcome back. It's so funny that I thought, okay, let's have a break of half an hour, and then somehow half an hour feels quite long. But listening to you guys chat, I think maybe you need a little bit more time. I'm not going to give it to you straight away. We have a second dialogue coming up first, and then after that we have lunch, and then lunch is an hour, so you can continue your talks with each other. But for now, I would like to invite you all to join this talk, not only by listening, but also by asking questions, if there's a remark or you want to add something to these wonderful people, to the things that they will be saying, please feel free to do so. In the first dialogue, I had to come up to you guys, but now I have my toy. So if you have a question or a remark, then it's also a test in how good I am at throwing and how good you are at catching. I'm not sure if I'm excited or not. It's it's a bit of both. Um, Before I introduce you and I introduce the topics we'll be talking about, I wanted to ask you all: do you know where you are? No. Well, Rotterdam could have been an answer. The Netherlands, but specifically more this place, Fruitvis. We're here at the Fruithaven, the fruit harbor. That's that part. And this place has been developed about 10 years ago, and I just spoke to the owner, and he told me all about it. And also where the name comes from, because Fruitvis means fruit fish. And he thought, well, he had to have fruit in the name because of the Fruithaven, the fruit harbor. And then he just wanted to add something, and he didn't necessarily know what, and somehow it became fish. Super exciting story. But a good name though, because if you Google it, this is the only place it will pop up. So very search engine optimization. The thing with these bits that we have in Rotterdam is that it's a development place. There's a lot of space for new experiences, for great talks, for people from the creative industry coming together. But that also means that this area around it becomes buzzing, and everybody knows that if an area becomes buzzing, the price of the ground goes up, and city council goes, hey, that's interesting. Let's kick the guy out and create new places there for people to live or for other businesses to thrive. In the beginning of this year, there was a political talk here because we had our verkiezingen, elections coming up, and then luckily this place has been saved for a little bit longer, and an opening has been made by the city council to maybe even not demolish the building, but we will have to see in a few years. So maybe next year when you come back to Rotterdam, it will still be here. Let's hope so. So that's a short story about Fruitvis. I would also like to tell you now that the live stream is up, so people are watching from home, from all over the world with us today. And they can also ask questions. So please, if you're tuning in via YouTube, if you have any questions or any remarks, please feel free to put them in the chat box and I will get them here and we'll make sure that you too can join in on the dialogue. Let me see. Yeah, that was it. Um, so when it comes to music theater and anything in life that touches the heart, it's easy to center the world around oneself. I sure do that. I do that. But with O Festival, we are trying to expand our views, and not necessarily in this anthropological kind of way that you just look at other people or other cultures, but that it engages you, that you get engaged. And also by trying to search for this common ground so that whatever differences there might be, there's always a common ground to find in which you can connect with each other. I will be talking with you about this in a little bit more. First off is Rajiv Bhagwanbali, Artistic Director at Rotterdam Street Culture Weekend and Independent Director at O, among many other things. Keranjeet Kaur, Chief Executive at South Asian Arts, and Pamela, Lopez, Programmer at the Gabriela Mistral Cultural Center in Santiago. Welcome. To start off with you, Rajiv, you started working at 5 years ago.
Yes.
What did you do? You came in. What did you do? What kind of festival was it?
Yeah. What I think I don't know what I was doing. I'm somebody that likes to connect with other people, um, other cultures. Always very interested in different art forms. Before I used to be a professional dancer, um, and then through my dance career, I got the chance to go to Senegal, and actually that touched my heart. It transformed me, and there I got interested in well everything besides dance as well, so music and poetry and whatever. And when I came back, I kind of reinvented myself, um, by connecting with other disciplines and other cultures, and trying to tell untold stories through different disciplines. And I think that when I got in touch with the O Festival, this is something that they were also very curious about, like what is the, because Rotterdam is it's a hyper diverse city. A lot of cultures are here, and the O Festival was very interested in how can we make that bridge, how can we be a true reflection of what Rotterdam City is, and I had the same interest, so we started doing projects together, and I'm very happy that I'm still doing it.
Yeah, cool. So basically, you're saying the O Festival was quite quiet. They didn't really engage with the, the entire scope of Rotterdam. Or,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I came in the office, I was the only non-white guy on the floor, um, but it didn't feel like that. I felt really welcomed. I felt really like, hey, we want to make this happen on a long term. I really felt that the mutual respect was there, and a lot of support in many different ways. I never had like a professional production at hand, marketing, like a whole team. And well, we were talking about hierarchies. It doesn't feel that there is like a hierarchy that you cannot talk to anyone, or you, it's an open space, and that's why I really felt welcome, and I still feel welcome, to to yeah, materialize my ideas. So yeah, that was, it was a really nice experience.
yeah. Keranjeet, you're from the UK. Um, does this sound familiar to you in the sense that there are bridges to build or gaps to overcome?
Yeah, for me, it was a slightly different reason for why I work where I work and why I run the organisation I run. As somebody who had migrated to the UK at the age of 6, 7 from East Africa, so my parental background, grandparent background is Punjab, India. Then they travelled, so I'm a double migrant. Um, and it was very much in sort of probably all my life in an odd way. There was like a foundation stone missing. You could see family around me, and I'm one member of about 300 extended members of family. So parties are always really great. But it was just as you were growing up, and when I was in Africa, I went to a school which was 1,200 population, school population, but I was one of 3 brown people in that school. My parents didn't want to send me to the Punjabi or the Indian school because they wanted us to have the British education that was like the benchmark to achieve and to succeed. That was success, sort of thing. So when the time came for independence of Kenya at that time, they opted either the option was to go to India or to the UK. My parents went, "Oh, we're going to go to the UK because of the British education." So we ended up in the UK. So that my whole journey has been very much among my friends and majority. But that particular time growing up were from a white background because that was my comfort zone. I didn't feel brown, by the way, during this time. I didn't feel any colour. I was just with people that accepted me for who I was. It was only when I got to university there was this realization. About the age of 15, there was a bit of a realization that we weren't quite like everyone else that I was hanging around with. So then I started to explore my culture a bit more, understand it a bit more, because everyone was auntie and uncle. But then, for some reason, that I was calling one of my aunts with a Pacific name, so Buaji or Chachaji. And they are titles that tell you the relationship, which the Western English doesn't have that situation. So this carried on. And then when I was at university, I discovered a bit more of my culture. Finally, married, went down to London. I was one of three in an all white building again. There was this like weird understanding that I've got this brick missing. There's a foundation missing. And what is that foundation? I started thinking, well, if I'm finding it missing, somebody else is finding it missing. So eventually I had my two children and I wanted them to have my culture and to have the right to it and all that kind of thing. Ended up moving back to Leeds as a single parent with two children and a tiny little advert that said Leeds Centre of Indian Music and Dance. I thought, oh, yes, I want to know more about my Asian or Indian or Pakistani writers. I know a little bit about Shakespeare, but I don't know any playwrights anywhere else. And I want to know more about the music, but I don't know any myself because I grew up on Western classical music and listened to the Indian Bollywood and the orchestral sounds of the 40s, 50s, but there was a disconnect going on. So it was a search for my own cultural identity and what was that in the sense of the artistic expression of it that got me to where I am today.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Thank you. And now I feel it's the right for everyone. If you're a taxpayer and you have paid that money and there's public money coming, there is a right for us to have culturally relevant arts that we engage with. So the organisation's commitment is to preserve the traditional for those that want to retain their heritage and their traditions of pure classical or folk or whatever it is. And then on the flip side of it is the facilitation of contemporary expression. So working with other organisations about how can we look at shared narratives, what's unique for each of them, but what's common. So what can we celebrate really easily together, but how can we celebrate our uniqueness, but through creativity and be empowered through creativity to express yourself in whichever way that might be.
Yeah, so the Empty Now Awards are also, I think, a way of celebrating the broad field of music theater and also all the different kinds of all the different cultures that also have some sort of common ground. Pamela, you were one of the jury members, and when it comes to bringing the whole world, maybe it's impossible to bring in the whole world, but you know, but through the Empty Now Awards, how did it go? How did you guys and women and non-binary people work with looking at all these different pieces and then establishing a benchmark? What kind of perspective do you use?
We flipped a coin. No, that's not. We didn't do that. No. I think as I've been telling everyone, I was very, very pleased to be part of this jury panel because, particularly, it was a group of people, a very diverse group of people, but not only in terms of checking the boxes. You know, not only there were like white people, brown people, women, men, etc., but also with very different backgrounds, narratives, and artistic specificities. You know, so for instance, when you think about music and theater pieces, there's a lot to be found there. You know, you can. I mean, it's a very wide concept for all the wonderful works that we got there and that we were able to find those common grounds, you know, between how to make a discussion and how to bring things up with probably some terms that were agreed at the beginning of the table, like quality, of course, and well, everyone has the quality to be part of the group, you know. But then we discussed a lot about having at least the idea of being diverse, whatever that means to anyone, you know, because diversity means different things to different people. And it's also, and I was thinking, because of the conversation that was going on previously here, about those paradigms that get into conflict, you know, at some points with the arts and because of the arts. Like we were talking about entertainment and arts, and we were talking about like participation or non-participation. Uh, so there's a new paradigm that I want to bring up to the conversation today, which has to do with identity or diversity. And somehow I think that's a shift that we're all kind of embracing in our different context, in our different countries, in our different art forms. Particularly in Chile, we're a very political country. And probably if I ask to any of you, what do you know about Chile? You will say wine, and then you will say something political like Pinochet or Allende or Bachelet or Boric now, like any politician from the history of Chile. And that's because, and right now we're in a very particular context as well, which is we're writing a constitution that's supposed to be voted in a couple of months from now. And we're hopefully, I particularly think it's going to be approved, but you never know. It might not be approved as well. And and then the question around the constitution has been a lot about whatever we're discussing now as well about how can we write a diverse text that represents everyone, but at the same time gives identity to the country. So how can we speak about being a Chilean in this case, or being part of a community or feeling part of a community, while at the same time embracing different ethnicities, languages, and being able to give particular identities to indigenous people, to migrants, to different communities as well. And that's something that we're actually currently struggling with, and we get in absurd conversations, but also very deep conversations. And I say absurd because this morning I was, well, I don't know if it was morning or night, I don't know anymore, but today I was listening to the radio in Chile, and some journalist was saying, well, in the new constitution we counted how many times it says indigenous people versus people. So it says more times indigenous people than Chilean people. So what does that mean for the people? And I was like, really? Like, so it's a big moment right now, and I think that of course for me, um, the arts are part of a political system. There always have been, and there always will be, and therefore I'm sorry if I gave such a long introduction, but for me it's super. For me, the process that we lived as a jury and what we're discussing right now here has a lot to do as well of, of what's going on in my country and probably in all of your countries for different reasons and in different contexts.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you said that maybe we could also look at the difference between identity and diversity. What I find in the Netherlands, at least, is that there has been a way of diversity boxes being checked. It's okay, so we have two brown people, we have one black person, we have one Asian person, and three women, and now we're done. And we have seven white men. But that's the balance. But that also means that as a person of color, when you come in an institute, the I find that there's a fear that the reason that you are in that institute is merely to bring diversity and not to bring your own identity and your story. You both are nodding, but you're just staring. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about that?
You felt the fear, huh?
Yeah.
No, no, I don't know. I think it depends. I've been working with a lot of people of color, different type of artists who are adopted by different types of institutions, and there are mixed feelings. Sometimes it does feel like they're they're a ticked box, and sometimes it feels like there's an honest interest in it. It's hard sometimes to really see it for what it is. Maybe when the process is over, you look back and you're like, what did I actually do? So it's difficult. I don't think it's sometimes it also feels like a gray area. Somebody really wants to have you for what you're doing, and sometimes they're like, hey, we have this money, we need to spend it. We might as well spend it on somebody with color. It just happens sometimes. And then you feel like, okay, now should I take it? Should I go for it or not? Well, if I take it, I can do whatever I want because they want me that bad. Maybe I should do it. You know, and because the term Trojan horse comes to mind. You know, sometimes you feel like, you know what, F it. I'm gonna go inside. And then when I'm inside, I'm gonna bring everybody in. You know, and that's what we kind of do right now. And with every artist that I'm talking, and I'm having this discussion, like, hey, Chief, this they asked me to do a project, but they only work with white people, and now they ask me to do a Ghana piece or whatever piece. Do you care? Do you care about how you got in? You're in now. We're talking now. Let's make it work. So sometimes also this, and yeah, I know it's a difficult phase we're in. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think it's been having that understanding as a person of color, being very clear about what the agenda is and being clear in yourself. So I would say back in 1997, when the organization I worked for, South Asian Arts UK, when it was first set up, there was this like moment of like absolute glee that would happen every time you got a phone call, say, from one of the institutions, oh, can you come and do this piece of work? And we go, yeah, we'd be so excited. And then they'd follow with, yeah, but we can just pay expenses. But we'd still do it because it was like, oh my God, we're going to get out there and we're going to see people and people are going to see us. And that was the whole thing. Then somewhere along that journey from 1997 to present day, there was a point where I went, okay, now, and especially when there was this huge drive for diversity agenda came in, I had a bit of a wake-up call, and so did everyone in the organisation. We went, because when we employ people, we don't look at whether they're a person of colour, whatever societal pigeon boxes they want to, holes they want to put them in. We just look, have they got the quality and have they got the ability to do what we want them to do? But we found when we were going the other way out, it was very much that tick box exercise was taking place. Oh, she's brown and she's a woman and she's this and she's this. So then I started to like call it. And I think and it doesn't matter which particular identity you have and you're being questioned about that identity, having the confidence to call it is important so that your negotiation becomes a lot more clear. So my call would be, are you got me in as a woman? Have you got me in because I'm a person of brown? And are you ticking a box, or do you really want to go through a process? Because working through with people from a different cultural background, different music, it might be a genre of music that you're doing, and we're trying to build bridges, that is a process which we do not know whether the result, depending on how you measure success, what is that going to be? But the journey and the transformation that brings about is what you have to be ready for. And when I went in with that, I found actually I was coming from a place of confidence and integrity, and the person on the other side often apologized because they were nervous about what to say because they knew what their agenda was, but they weren't confident enough to actually call it. I can call myself brown, but it's not easy for somebody else who's not brown to say, oh, you're a brown person. So, and actually for me, the inspiration has been my children, my daughter in particular, who just will say, I'm a brown person. So the next generation are really quite activists in that way and empowering a senior generation like mine to say, it's okay to call it. And I think that's really important, integrity in what you want to do. So for me, I live by certain words, and those are that I have a choice. So like Rajiv, you have a choice. Are you going to be the Trojan horse going in to empower, enable, change, transform, and be ready for what you might get back on the other side? Or are you somebody who just want to be in that arena? Yeah, you take
I do have a
responsibility
question though. I do
and
have
accountability.
maybe to all of you, because what would happen if an institute would ask you to take a box, right?
Yeah.
I got a bag of money. I got 50K, and you can do a project, and deep inside, I'm gonna take a box. But what if they
Ask
say,
them to make it 150K and then you just go in
okay,
and take
okay,
that
okay, okay,
box.
okay, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that. But are you gonna do it? When is it okay? Because you were talking about integrity, right? Because I can imagine that you think, you know what, there's 50K, I'm gonna take it. They don't know what they're bringing in, but when I'm there, they're gonna see, and they're gonna want more. Maybe not. But what is happening inside of you? Because some people do, some people don't. I don't have a judgment. I just
Yeah.
wonder, like, how do you feel about it?
I feel. Do we want to discuss this?
I
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting to me.
No, no, yeah. I
I
kind
don't
of
wanna hijack.
maybe I'm gonna say I. Okay, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I kind of agree with boxes a little bit.
Okay.
You know,
You sorry? You said
I agree with
you
boxes.
agree with
You don't
boxes.
mind?
Yeah, no, because first, at a certain point, we can all fit in a box. You know, either we're women, either we are we're from a tribe, either we have a disability, and if not, we're in the arts, so we're still in a box. Okay, no matter what, we're a minority. You know, um, that from one side, but also it's because eh, I of course sometimes I feel myself I'm in panels and in things because I'm in a box. I'm a Latina person, you know. I mean, and I'm a woman and blah blah blah. But if those boxes were not there, there was no way my voice was going to be heard, probably, you know. So it's triggering and it's moving the line a little bit forward, and wonderful things happen when you have all the perspectives on the table, and it's not about the concept like in Spanish we would say we talk about perspectiva de género, which is gender perspective, right? Which is not the same as gender just by itself, you know. It's because it's impossible that you can think about bringing in the voices of women if there's not a woman there. It's impossible if you can think about bringing the voices of indigenous people if there's no one there that's from an indigenous community, you know?
But how do you feel about the notion that that those are all boxes you can tick? The woman, the person of color, the Latina, but they are all different from what is the norm, which has been for quite a while white male. That is, we can make that a box, but throughout the world, it's not really a box. It's the norm. It's the point of view that from which everyone uh, starts.
Here, I mean, not everywhere, right?
Yeah,
everywhere. Here, I would say.
yeah, but
Everywhere.
even in other places,
I
because
know, I
you
know.
just said that, like uh, to achieve while growing up and going to school, you had to go to a British school because that is, that's the norm you want to.
Yeah, that was a
That's
parental norm. That was
Yeah.
the norm back then. So you're talking about the 1960s type of thing. Today, there has been a shift, and it's taken evolution takes a long time to take place. But there is, there is another one in the sense of probably in the Asian world, and it's that patriarchal challenge that one of the pieces had. You know, we as a woman and being a single parent, carrying on being little children, and the children that I brought up, my 300 members of the family were questioning why I didn't have a husband and why didn't I remarry. And that was a challenge in itself because I said, well, I don't have the need. I'm quite happy the way I am and I'm capable of bringing up my children. So, you have this constant battle, doesn't matter where it is. But I think what the arts allows us to do is to bring that story to the forefront and actually provoke and make people question why, because for them it's fear half the time. When I think of my parents asking me that question, my mum in particular, oh, because you're going to be alone and you're not safe. But actually, I am very safe. I'm quite fine. But for her, it's a fear that I'm alone and, not cared about, or I don't have protection or something like that. So I think there's a thing called fear that exists. And a lot of the time, when you have these challenges that you walking and you are somebody that's different, maybe a person of color or a woman, into a space, it's about how you can bring about that change, but being aware of the fears that you're going to be dealing with and have you got the strength to deal with them, and only step into that arena if you've got the strength and ability to do that, because it's quite it can pull you, and then you have to go and do recovery mode and then snap back in again. And that's happened quite a lot, sort of thing. So I think for me, the expression of art allows you to do that, and creativity allows you to do that. And I'm from a fashion design background. So that piece yesterday that I saw was like, whoa, that's my world. And the colouring, the fact there was a reference to an Indian dish, that was even that really made me connect. I thought, yeah, okay, they're speaking my language. They know what I'm about. But that for me, that's evolution, because that was really about recognizing the pantry and the fashion and the change and all of those kinds of things. And there was a connect with me. I don't know how many others did, but at that moment, I was on that stage with them. So
Funny, because I thought while they were saying all those different dishes, because I also heard couscous, and I was like, it's couscous. But sure, I thought, is this a new form of checking all the boxes? Just spitting out all the dishes, because that is what people know, the dishes, when it comes to different cultures.
again, I think it's like I was saying, sometimes that box, it's about how you perceive that box.
Yeah.
You can either be egotistical and say it's offended me, or to say, actually, how do I take advantage of this as the Trojan horse thing? Yeah, yes, okay. But also it's about, it's a mechanism for measuring, and then allowing that voice to be heard in an arena or a space that you can go in and make that change. And I think it's about being able to, I agree with Rajiv, it isn't really about making that choice, stepping in, and then having that, how do I bring about transformation? And it isn't easy by no means, but you can bring about that transformation. And in fact, we'd had a previous conversation, but we were talking about where I have a scenario in the UK, and I don't know if Rajiv yours is the same, but I'm, we're migrants in a place trying to make our sense of place and our home, but you have a slight opposite to us in the sense of, you got indigenous people that you want for them to feel that this is their country, as much as because they were there first. So I think that, there are different things that we're dealing with.
When talking about bringing in all these different cultures, how do you find the common ground? What is the common ground? Have you been able to find that within the Empty Now Awards even?
I don't know how to do it, but I know that it needs to be like what I've learned from every different project about every different specific topic. It has been that it needs to be it has to be an integral plan, Eh, because even though in the arts, like probably inside in this room, we are all in a box in terms of the value of change, of the arts. Like probably some of us are administrators or managers, some others are artists, some others are or all audiences, at some point. But it needs to be in a 360 form way. Like it's not only about having a fantastic program and a beautiful whatever specific program that you bring together to speak about X topic,
Yeah.
but it's also like you need to be aware of how is your organization facing those issues in terms of employees, in terms of how's the diversity inside the house, and but it also has to do with your audience members, like who are you bringing in and why, and who has been left behind. um, so I think it's a very difficult question because it includes so many different areas, and we all relate to all of those areas because we're working in venues, and at the same time we're creators, and some other times we're audience members. But I would say that for me, it's how do we think about these if from all the possible perspectives, and it's hard work because a lot of this also, of course, takes money to do so. Just related to the funding conversation we were having before, and it takes time, which is also time is also money at some point. Yeah.
Um, yeah, this funding thing is interesting. I'm talking with a lot of different people from, well, the street culture, and as well as different cultures who are in Rotterdam City, and what I feel is that I'm having the same conversation all the time,
Which is?
which is, huh? There's money for this? We can get this funded? What? I'm like, yeah, I mean, what you're doing is so amazing. Why don't you do a project? And they look at me with their sheep eyes. They have no clue. They have no clue. And every time I'm having the same conversation,
Why don't they know? Is it because they don't value what they're doing?
no, they do value it, but most of the time it's preaching to the choir. When I'm doing a traditional piece or whatever, I'm doing it for the people who already know about it, and we all appreciate the art form because we all come from that same culture, right? But if you want to expand or elevate or deepen the process or whatever, there are ways that your city is going to facilitate it. But that means you need to go on the internet and Google, how do I get funding? Most of these people don't even know how a computer works. That's the thing. If you know how a computer works, you have to understand there is a system that you can get into. And even if you find that system, you need to intellectually grasp the process of writing a plan, making a budget, getting a production, doing a marketing. That's a whole lot of work for somebody who is just in the art and just been doing what they're doing for a long time. And yeah, that's what I feel that is a big hurdle. People cannot make use of this system, which is also there for them.
Well, is it? Is it there for them if they don't know how to make use of it?
I mean, it's there for them on paper, right? On paper,
Yeah.
it's there for them. If it's factually there for them, if we want to have a conversation and you are going to speak Arabic and I speak Dutch, and then you say, yeah, but I'm telling you all the facts, but I just don't understand what you're saying. Yeah, but I told them so. Yeah, that's my responsibility. That's a problem, and I'm not saying that sometimes it's easy to say, yeah, but they are wrong. The system is wrong. I just think they don't know. And I hope that the system is open enough to listen to conversations like this to understand maybe we should make the conversation different. Maybe the pathway to funding should be different because it's not connecting right now. Every artist needs to have somebody who got the 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 brains to write the plan, to write the budget, because the system is set up like this.
Yeah.
Can I just interject there? I think there is another challenge that we have when it comes to that kind of thing. Within our Asian culture, and I'm going to speak from that one in particular, we don't have a separation between art and culture.
No.
It's part and parcel of the way that we are. So, and I can speak particularly about, and I know this is a tradition more among South Indian families, in the sense of when you're growing up, yes, you've got to get your education. Yes, you must know how to cook if you're a female, definitely. And yes, you've got to do all of these things, but you also must have either trained as a dancer, done some kind of music, achieved an Angetharam, which is like a presentation on stage that you've achieved a certain level, then possibility are much greater. So what I've seen happen in the UK, particularly, there'll be a South Indian community that's more migrating more in because they're doctors, they've qualified as doctors. But then you discover that those doctors are also qualified dancers. And now they realize that they could actually dance but they do it because then they have their community events and they'll just go for free and they'll go and do their dance performance, etc., etc., etc. And it's them that don't realize that actually there's a way that they can develop that further. So how could a doctor, perhaps working on something specific, so I have one, she's over in Hull. She works specifically around midwifery, childbirth, and she's never thought about how she could use her dance to talk about that narrative to make an impact to the patients that she's dealing with. And often she's dealing with young females who are aborting because they've that, you know, they're not wanting to have their child, they're a single, whatever, for whatever reason it might be. And she's never thought about it that way. And so there is this like other disconnect that's taking place within people, particularly from a different background, who are not used to a system of arts funding.
Well, we've heard two examples now. Is there a way to bring them in? One is telling them there's funding and telling the people that give the funding that they might need a different way. But how do you go about bringing them in?
Never thought about how to tell the people that give the funding, but that's a good one. I'll keep that in mind when I'm next time around a table when I need to make that conversation. But when it comes to the other way around, when I've been in a situation or in a conversation with a group of people and somebody's brought an idea along, I've often said, okay, I have set aside time. You come, knock on my door. It's an open door. Tell me what it is you want to do, and I will show you the process by which you do it. And hopefully the next time round you can do it yourself. Then I encourage them to make the application. They send it back to me. I have a read of it, tweak it, send it to the marketing person, send it to the other person. We all do it, put our bit in, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, it's successful. So I have one dancer who did exactly that. She had been inspired by, well, no, she was concerned about technology in life, in a human being's life. And that came out because her daughter's first words were, Alexa, stop. And she went, oh my God, like Alexa's in between me and my child. And that on its own triggered her. And she came into a conversation, you know, at my office and said, you know, I'm really feeling that we're being slaves to technology. I said, oh God, that's a really great idea. What can we do? So I asked her to go away and put her narrative together. What were her concerns? What were the challenges? What did she think was good? And when she brought that back, I then worked with her, and she was successful at getting the funding that she needed on the dance side. She didn't have the money for the music side, so I got that money in from PRS to create the music that she needed to explore the whole piece, to create that piece. But that means, to a certain degree, I had to change the organisational's drive and bring this area in for supporting artists, not just simply supporting, but actually holding their hands on the first process, and then they're empowered and enabled enough to carry on themselves and still come back to the role.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Actually, I totally subscribe to what you're saying. My experience is that I cannot just show them the door because they won't walk through it. I have to walk together with them through that door, and I've made peace with the fact that some of the artists will never write a plan, and I've taken the responsibility on myself that I am one of the people, together with a whole lot of other people, that have the responsibility to help them. So I just say, my door is open. You come. You tell me the plan. I'm gonna write. I do it like that, and it's very time intensive. I know, and a lot of people have told me, don't do it because blah blah blah. I'm like,
Why would someone say don't do it?
because there's only 24 hours in a day, and sometimes you need to sleep. And but still, I feel that more of us should do this. There should more of a. If we're talking about we are supporting the culture, what does that mean? We can point our fingers, or we can actually do the work. And for the people who cannot do it themselves, I think sometimes we need to work.
Before I go to the audience problem?
Yeah, no, it's like listening to my peers here. It, yes, I agree with everything, but there's also somehow the thought that it's not. There's always the question of, is this system working for us or is it not? Is it balanced? Is it a system that embraces everyone? And probably the question is no, but also the answer, sorry, is no. But also maybe we need to think that we are part of that system as well. The system is not that something that's really separated from us and just over there in some other matrix. We are gatekeepers as well, and we're responsible and co-responsible of that system. So we need to think about what we will do. We'll perpetrate that. So we'll apply for the funding, and if this not, we will help people to go to get the funding, so we can go on with that system. Or B, let's go out of the streets. No, no, there's many options, but I think, or B, like, let's try to change the system. Let's try to make it better. Let's see what part can we actually play in cultural policies. How can we make our voices being heard? um, because if not, is a patronizing way of keeping things the way they are, because we're comfortable in that way, in that system, because probably we're all people that know how to write the grant, and we get the grants and blah blah blah. So then we share a little bit of our knowledge with someone else. Maybe there are some other ways. I don't have the answers, because if not, I would be writing books and doing some other things. I just have the questions, I think, and the reflections, and I'm just open to have all these conversations and think, what should we do? And maybe there's no one correct answer. Maybe it's a little bit of everything, you know. But yeah.
There is one thing I'd like to I think there's another flip side to this. One side is obviously the funding. It always ends up being the funding conversation. But I think there's a programming conversation here as well. It's about people who have the institutions and thinking about actually, how could their programming, their artistic drive also be a little bit more inclusive or a bit more considerate. So, at the moment, the way that MT now is working, I think I looked at it and I think, wow, it's brilliant. But I do remember that, when I think back to India, musical theatre has been part of our storytelling tradition, but perhaps there were people out there that don't know that this exists, that could actually be applying for next year's round of the competitions, etc. So how do we, Rajiv, myself, or those of us that are now aware of it, help to raise the awareness of this opportunity? That's one side of it. And I think when it comes to one of the works that I'm doing, because again, South Asian arts is quite, that brown umbrella is really diverse underneath it. There's 14 languages just in Leeds spoken, but there's 86 states in India, never mind Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. But I myself have thought about, okay, yes, I'm doing Indian classical music, Indian classical dance. They're the two performing arts that we particularly focus on, and it's contemporary expression of it. But now we're doing a 2-year project, which is actually about going to listen to those 14 languages, find out what do they do for their art and culture? How do they, get engaged so that it can actually inform our work? And then how can I take that knowledge that I gain to help support other institutions within Yorkshire, UK, wherever, who I'm having conversations with, to say, actually, this has come from the horse's mouth. And this is what I've learned. But this is today, not based on the colonial past or what your assumptions were about exotic India, whatever it might be. So there's a challenge about changing perceptions. And I think that, and it's, again, don't know the answers. Yeah. But I think as advocates, we could definitely, all of us could be part of that process.
Yeah. I think the basis is just having more voices and having more stories. And once that happens, I think the audience also will engage, wherever the audience is. Speaking of audience, are there any questions?
Wow. Whoa.
You have to speak into the
This is the microphone. Wow. My name is Michael. I'm from Ireland. I'm a composer and writer and the artistic director of Straymaker, which is a music theatre company based on the Northern Irish border. And I have a question just with regard to audiences. So I suppose when opportunities come from institutions, to what extent do you find that there's a responsibility to bring the audience who would normally come to your performances, like say your home performances, to bring them into other institutions, and to what extent is there an openness there from the institution to that? Is that something that you find is a struggle, or is it something that naturally happens, that when your work is shown, say, in an institution where it wouldn't normally be, that the audience follows?
Nope. It's not that easy. A lot of the times, in my experience, people from from cultures that normally don't go to theater, even though you put like a headliner in that theater, they're not gonna show up because they're used to something else. So that means everything needs to change. Everything. The way that you promote it, the way that you maybe you're not in the cultural newspaper maybe you're on the local radio that only plays the Bollywood songs. You never hear a promotion of a new piece on Radio Amor. You never hear that. Um, it's really difficult. Even what I've noticed is that the artists themselves, they go in with a disbelief. They're gonna perform. They're gonna do their best. They don't even tell their friends. They don't even tell their friends, their own friends, until they're there and they see like, yo, this is actually really cool. And then when it's too late, they're gonna be like, yo, hey, you need to come, man.
It's literally what you just did with me.
That's what I did with my own show. But this is my experience, and that's a it's a problem. I don't know if it's a problem. It's what's happening right now, and we need to. It's you need to be very early in the process, and it's a risk that you're taking because who's going to invest in Radio Amor?
No, but also maybe going past your own discomfort of believing that you have the right to own that space, to claim that space in which you're going
Yeah.
to perform, and that it's actually that it's true, that it is happening, that it is valid, and it needs to be seen.
And it's a process because we're not used to this. We're not used to people watching, looking at us, and saying it's worth it's something valuable. We're not used to this. So when we're there, we still don't believe it. Like, oh shit, people are
I
gonna
think
come.
there's another thing. Where we are in that process right now. We're working with Dominic on Opera North production on Monteverdi's Orfeo and reimagining it. Okay, so the process when it began was number one, finding the artists, because we were going to go 50-50 on the cast. So finding the artists, who are they? And that took, Dominic might put a call out for Western opera singers, musicians, and he probably would get a massive application probably. In my case, it was pick up the phone, talk to the person, tell them what the idea is, how that story of Orpheus is also in our Vedic scriptures, do all of that conversation. I think we nearly got the 50%. Now it's on the audience. Now it's moving. What do we do about the audience? So there was an evening that was held for launching the season with the general manager, and I went along, and I took along people who wouldn't normally go to this. So the thing that happens is often the communities that they want to engage in don't feel that place is theirs. So even getting to the door, even getting on a bus to think about going to the door. So in Leeds, the challenge is they don't feel safe going into the city. So that's number one, just getting them to that point. Secondly, walking through the door, how are they going to get greeted at the door? Historically, my experience has been when I worked with another institution was that the people would arrive, they would ask for the actor in the play and not the production. Box office would get upset, like, I don't know what you're talking about. That attitude, which then would put Antaji off, which then means if she's like me with 300 people in her family, that's 300 people out the door straight away. And in fact, there was a Jewish pharmacist I worked for in London, and he said, if you've got one member of the family, you've got them all. So that's one thing. Box office staff, the institution has to remember that that we have different cultural etiquettes. And some of the work that I do is about informing those cultural etiquettes and how far do you go with them, where you can reach a point where it works for the institution, but it also works for the community that you're about to get through that door. And there's some very broad brush judgments made very, very easily. So, it's the accent is hard for some people to understand because they might still have a very strong Indian, Punjabi. They don't pronounce the words the same. So understanding what they're actually asking for, having the knowledge that if I pick up this brochure and say, can you just point to which one you want to go to? Because they might recognize the picture. So there's these nuances about engagement and really being warm and welcoming that's part of, and our culture is very much food, greeted at the door, a sweet offered to you to celebrate that we're about to do a beginning. So when I do concerts, In the 25 years, I've ever missed 2 concerts. But when they arrive, I'm normally at the door. Hi, good evening. Hi, Auntie. How are you? Come on in. It's like a dinner party. Your concert is your dinner party. You are inviting your guests too.
Yeah.
They've taken time out. They may have paid £1, they may have paid 30 quid, whatever they've paid. But that moment, they're the most important individual. And in a whole room, you transform an individual differently, but there's a togetherness that they have that experience. And I think these are like institutional changes about customer service.
Yeah, 'cause that's what it is.
That's what it is. And understanding which kind of customer service do you need for which individual. From the old person walking through the door, doesn't matter what ethnicity they come from, that older person wants to be treated as an older person and respected for the years of life that they've lived. To the young person who's like, really cool, hi, how you doing?
I'm actually very nervous.
Yeah. Or extra nervous, do you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think these are things that also need to be thought about in the development of engaging a wider, more diverse audience. How do you push inclusivity in your customer service, how you work with it? The nuance of working as artists, I've been working with a team at Opera North and said, okay, by the way, when you have this conversation, do it this way. Mention my name, they'll remember that more than they'll remember Sorry UK. You know, these are things, yeah.
First person. First,
It's kind of like this, but also a bit different because in the case of GAM, we're a cultural place.
so process is
It's kind of the way of
Can you all
finding.
hear her?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
It's finding the way of building a relationship, and then that relationship, for sure, it's going to end up in buying a ticket or in participating in some form or way in any of the programs. But that relationship is built in through several manners or ways, and not all of them are not even like cultural or artistically. For instance, right now, what are we doing with people? We're actually a vaccination place in our open plazas, so people can go to GAM to get a vaccine. 2 years ago, we had a Red Cross stand because we had wounded people in the streets because of the rioting, and we gave people lemons and carbonated water for the tear gases. So we've done all that, and because that's a way also of building a relationship and telling people that you care about them, and you're there to be in a space that protects them and embraces them in different ways and formats. And eventually, that's gonna come up. Probably not in tomorrow, but probably the day after. It's gonna come up into building an audience.
It's basically being rooted in the community, yeah, and just like actually being
Sure.
part of the community. And all these
Sure,
ways.
we have all these open plazas where these young people go to dance, like urban dances, and I don't know why we've always thought like this young people are like dance audiences, which is kind of it's literally a mistake, because we have all this fantastic like programming, and we try to program for them in the venue, but they never go in the venue. And then I go outside and say, hey, it's free, here's some tickets, and I see you're doing some hip-hop dancing where we have hip-hop inside of the room. And they're saying like, yeah, but lady, we're like training here, like go away. I'm like, because what they're using there, they're participating as well, but in a different format. And when the need from us is the space and security and bathrooms and some other utilities, and they know what we program, they know what we do, and whenever they feel like it, they know they're welcome. But it's also about listening, I guess,
And
and
maybe also they are the venue next time.
probably,
Go out to them.
and we've done that as well. Yeah, we put them on the stage.
Yes, thanks. We're still running out. I'll just look at the audience and see if there's one more question before we go to lunch. And if you're hungry, then there shouldn't be an extra question. You can also just ask it during lunch. No? Okay, one of you.
It's been so amazing hearing you all talk. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I struggle when we talk about diversity and we have to say in the same sentence, oh, they must be qualified. We talk about the quality. when we don't talk about that, when we talk about our white people, do they have the quality to have their work on? So I think that we know that we are, and we know that there are so many different ways to tell stories and to make art. That's it, really. It's not really a question.
Thank you.
Can I just respond on that one? I think we do have quality norms in these different cultures, but maybe not in the way that we know it in the like the quality norms that we're used to. How can I put this?
Well, it all depends on how you measure quality.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, if I speak for street culture, everybody knows who's the top dog or top woman in that scene. If you're gonna go to the Vogue scene, the mother of the house, the father of the house. If you're gonna go to the MCs, you know who's going to make that track fire. You know, you don't have to see a resume. You know, and there is like an internal knowing, but it's I can't grasp it really. But that's the magic. I did a show yesterday with two Ghanaian bands, and there was a bass player that came from Kumasi. I never heard this guy play ever, and everybody's like, "Jeef, he's the best." And the way that they spoke to me, I'm like, "He's probably gonna be good." I never heard this guy play, and now I have to make that call. Is he gonna come or not? Is he gonna play or not? And I just look around. I talk to the people who know. He came and he blew up the place. So that's also a certain quality. I don't know how to pinpoint it. I can't really say how that goes. But if you know, you know. Yeah. But it's a different type of maintaining the quality. Yeah, for sure.
One last comment I just want to make, and again going back to institutions and audiences, I think one of the challenges that audiences, that institutions have, is when you start to bring work in that's more inclusive and more reflective of the global population that you might want to be bringing in to take the bums on seats. You have an audience that you've had loyal for many years who are used to you presenting your work in a specific way, in a specific style, and if it's not done in that way, you've got a challenge of upsetting some that have a particular thing to then greeting the new one. And I think there's something about that might need to be explored and be aware of. So again, it's a process, it's slow, and it's about evolving and changing and challenging perceptions to actually end up with a successful result that is reflective of the population that you are serving. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Keranjeet, Pamela, and Rajiv. Lunchtime. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.